Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another salty Saturday morning. I am your host, Mr. Kadish. Get it right. That is my official title. And we got a heck of an episode for you guys today. The theme of today's episode is all about how Hollywood hates its fans. And we're going to be talking about all types of stories, giving that example. But first, let me introduce you to our fantastic panel of nerds, starting with Dutch Butters, the man, the myth, the legend. How you doing, Dutch?
I'm here. Hi, everybody. What's going on? Brian
here.
Oh, look, Tom's down there in the corner. Kadish is here. Eggroll's here. Nice to see everybody. We're just missing Odin right now. I'm looking at the stream over here on the side. You said you started a new button, and I'm trying to figure out why it took forever for it to come on, but I think I lost my membership privileges. So I need somebody to gift me a membership because I'm seeing ads and shit over here in the thing. I'm like, oh, what the hell's going on in this thing? And so guess we can find out. Come on, gift membership lottery. Let's go.
Let's get Vader a membership to his own channel.
Yes, got to do it. But for those Dutch Butters fans out there, Mr. Butters is going to have to leave the show early today because he has a work commitment that he's going to have to duck out about 20 minutes early for.
Yeah.
So enjoy his presence while it lasts, is what I have to say.
What's my present?
And not your presence.
Yeah, I thought we were all, yeah.
No, we'll get to you, Tom. But first, we must welcome back our shield against all things intersectional and woke. He's here. He's queer. He's Brian from the Popcast. How you doing, buddy?
What's happening, bro? I'm glad to be back. Glad to see Tom again. Tom in that turtle face of his. How you doing, buddy? Eggroll, Vader. Butters. Sorry to dead name you. And always good to see you, Matt.
You can call me whatever you want, man. Hey, I feel like it's like a reunion show or something because we haven't had the panel on here all at the same time in like weeks.
Yeah, it has been weeks.
So,
I've been here.
sort of when you get out of this kitchen with your bowl of cereal.
I'm still here though.
He's here in spirit, Butters. He's here in spirit.
He's in the chat talking shit. And we're like, hey man, you gonna turn your camera on?
Are you gonna actually show up in the actual stream?
I'll be there when I be there. I'm feeding the turtles right now.
Yeah. Brian, how was your appearance on Pop Culture Minefield?
It's great. Brett's a really good dude. Mary's fun. Good times. You know, the travel sucked. Ugh. Too fat to travel. I'm learning that the hard way.
Travel out there is pretty rough.
It's brutal.
They got quite a setup there at the old cast mansion.
Yeah. I didn't see any chickens though. Like you told me there were chickens, and I couldn't find any chickens.
No, they're in the back chicken coop.
No, there was none there. I was wandering around the whole property looking for chickens.
You know where they're at? They're in the freezer. They're in the freezer.
Brett was like, I'm done with these damn chickens, dude.
Yeah. I wonder if they moved them to the new cast castle in West Virginia.
They must have, yeah.
Might have. But you know who else is moving in is the Lord of the Shelves, the King of the Pineapple Pizza, Odin from OMB Reviews.
I'm doing just fine. How are you all doing today?
So not to take the name of Pineapple Pizza in vain, but Matt Vader found a new battle that we're going to be fighting thanks to our friend Nadia on social media. Matt, do you want to read that tweet?
I do. Nadia posted that this earlier. I think today's the 4th or the 5th. I think anyway, it doesn't matter. From Nerd Dollface. I need to know what goes on people's heads that choose creamy peanut butter when it is the inferior one. So the fight is creamy versus chunky peanut butter. Everybody,
it's
creamy is the best.
Yeah, creamy. Creamy is definitely the best.
Who the hell wants to eat chunky peanut butter?
I don't think that's nearly as divisive as.
Well, here's the thing: you guys are all wrong because crunchy is the much superior.
Bro,
peanut
try
butter.
spreading crunchy on
I do
a
it. I
soft
just
piece of
did
bread.
it. I just did it.
What do you got? Microwave it first? Or what's the deal?
I put crunchy peanut butter on a frozen waffle.
Yeah, well, frozen's different. It's stiff, bro.
It was already cooked. It
Well, then it's cooked. It's still stiff. You can put on some soft bread. It's like just ripping the bread to pieces.
You need to be gentle. There's a technique to it. and
No,
you
there's
really
a
don't
technique
know
to
what
it.
it is.
That's seriously though. Think about it. That's lazy man's peanut butter because
No,
they
no,
haven't
it's
even
not.
finished doing the job.
Yeah, they haven't
right?
finished
They
actually
literally
making the peanut butter.
It was an incomplete process of making it
No,
creamy,
yeah.
and so there's
No.
chunks left over, and you're like, oh, this is just a
a
new
good
version.
point.
Yeah, so guys, I want to throw this to the chat. If you're watching this on the replay, let us know in the comments. Which do you think is the superior product, creamy or chunky peanut butter? That's what I want to know. Speaking of creamy, Tom Connors from Midnight's Edge. How you doing, buddy? Are you still here?
Arguing with a couple idiots over the Joker movie. If you can believe there's a few people that actually like that stupid thing.
We're going to
Dude,
talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, my brother was like, "Oh, I actually love the movie." Then he gets to the last like 10 minutes. He goes, "All right, I didn't like the movie."
Yes, indeed. And welcoming him back to the program is the one and only Mr. Philip Chan from Project Eggroll. By the way, guys, subscribe to Project Eggroll. Their link is in the description and pinned in the chat if you haven't checked them out before. Stop the Asian hate. Go check them out. How you doing, Mr. Philip?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me back. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for all the talk today.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Just some quick housekeeping stuff, guys. So we got a new top donator, or I should say top super chatter. Scotty Dub came in last week with a $500 super chat, de-seating Brian G, who also has a $500 super chat. But because Scotty Dub is more recent, he gets the top billing. So
Yep.
big shout out to Scotty Dub for the major super chat. He is now our top super chatter. Brian G coming up second place with 500, and William Forbus still hanging in there. Nobody's beating him for the 120 super chat.
That'll buy a lot of chunky peanut butter.
It will be very chunky. We also got Mexican Iron Man, who is our most consistent donator. Every time we do a live stream, he comes in and drops some super chats on us. Really appreciate Mexican Iron Man. And of course, our top gifters are Jillian N, Bob Dorsey, Sam Schwager, Major Chai Chai, and Eric Winberg. One of those people has already donated a gifted membership during this live stream, which we'll get to in a little bit. But guys, our goal for this week is, or this episode, I should say, is 10 new members during the course of this live stream. Let's see if we can get 10 new members into the Salty Nerd membership. We just released a brand new members video talking about Corey Feldman, of all people. So go check that out in the members only playlist on our channel if you get the membership. And also, guys,
check it out.
Yep. Also, guys, we got a new thing going on here, which is don't forget to clip and comment. Now, you might not know this, but you can actually clip things from the live stream, and they will show up on our community clips feed on our page. So it's pretty easy to do. You can only do it through the mobile app, I think, right now. But if you go to your mobile app and you're watching the replay, you'll see these little buttons here, remix and clips.
Oh.
So if you hit those, you can like clip out things from our longer live stream and they'll show up on our channel. But if you're watching live, there's this other one, which is a little scissor icon down there. And all you need to do is hit that while you're watching us live on your mobile phone, and you can actually clip out a moment that would be kind of cool to see. And so, like, we're trying to get our viewers to be a little bit more interactive and show us what moments from the Salty Saturdays they actually really like and enjoy.
People doing that over on the gaming channel, and I haven't understood what they were doing. I'm like, where are these coming from? I was like, they find the dumbest, most idiotic moments of my streams or our shows, and they clip them, and I'm like, oh, come on.
Yep.
What are you
And
doing?
with that, kids, that's all the time we have for today. So we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Because Kadish takes up the whole show just with the intro.
Yeah, he does. Yes.
Well, if we actually started on time when you guys are supposed to be here, it would probably last a little bit longer.
Nobody stops you.
Anyway, guys.
Seats.
Want to give a big shout out to Mephisto over at Mephisto's Movie Reviews. At the end of this live stream, we're going to be redirecting to his Real McCoy podcast. Really good stuff over there. So stay tuned after this live stream is over. We're going to be sending you over there. And big shout out to Culture Casino for rating the our live stream after his. So big shout out. Love Culture Casino. All that good stuff.
Hit the like button and all that business. Yeah. No, but you act like we're especially Odin and I aren't like professionals like the Anchorman, where we're literally coming in flying at the last minute, doing our thing, getting our makeup done, and all of a sudden the show starts and we're ready. We're like, we've been there the whole time.
Tom,
You just,
Tom, the show,
if it wasn't
the show,
for you, wouldn't
Tom,
know.
the show starts at 10 a.m., not 10:07.
You are such a liar.
It's 1 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right.
Well, it's
West Coast
10:22
people.
Pacific now. So
Yeah.
Well, guys, you know what time it is? It's time to get some super chats. Big
Oh.
shout out to Eric Winberg,
Nice
who
segue.
gifted 1 Salty Nerd podcast membership. Thank you so much, Eric. You continue to be on the top gifters list, even though you only drop one per episode. We appreciate your consistency. Fluffy Panda, member for 17 months. I can forgive hatin' pineapple, but dissin' chunky. Oh,
Yeah.
them's fighting words.
Right.
And then we also got Fluffy Panda for $5. People who love creamy peanut butter are the same people that march behind Brian during Pride Month in San Fran while chasing innocent dogs with their creamy peanut butter tubs. Ain't that true,
Jesus.
Brian? Ain't that true?
I have a
No,
response
it's
to
not.
that. If you want to highlight my response to his direct super chat,
Please.
because
Please
he
highlight his
really
response.
honestly wants it to be said. Are you going to highlight the comment?
Yes. Give me 1 second. There we go. O&B reviews. Only the Pride community would like it rough like that.
That means two
Checkmate. Check and
Yes.
mate, good
boy.
sir.
Oh boy.
And guys, since we have an
over
actual Asian on the panel today, I wanted to have him read this one. So take it away.
Way to the motherfucker gentleman with the 199. Any Stargate new buying. The bird is a word.
That was awesome.
So
Nothing
yeah,
like the
whatever
real
hell
thing.
Matthew's
Nothing
been
like the
doing
real
every
thing.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stargate news. No. So despite some channels saying there's Stargate news, that is not the case. When I saw their post, I did reach out to my guy and I was like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And he's like, "I don't know what they're talking about."
Right on. And we also have Old Man Rising for $5. Hail Dutch. Hail saltynerdiscord.com/SM2 channel. Down
That's
with
the
the
Space Marine
matriarchy. Space Marine 2 channel. Down with the matriarchy. Y'all are the content that we decide what's fun. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed I do. Okay, guys. So enough housekeeping out of the way. I'm sure Tom will be very happy with that. You know what's going to
What?
wake me up,
Huh?
though?
Put a chick in it, make her gay.
Rachel Zegler has struck back, guys.
Oh, Lord.
Weird.
At least her publicist has, because this article in Variety, where she basically gets rehabilitated for all of her terribleness, is very much a puff piece that I am sorry I took the time to read because it's really stupid. But Rachel Zegler is back in the news because not only does she have the Snow White movie coming out, but she's also been cast as Juliet in a new Romeo and Juliet adaptation on Broadway. So her publicist is working overtime to try to make her more likable. But guess what, guys? She's facing off against toxic Disney fans.
Uh-oh.
And that's the stance that she's taking in this article. And I have a few highlights here I just want to go through. So for as long as she's been famous, she's been the subject of ruthless and relentless criticism. And every time she speaks up about racism and sexism in the entertainment industry, she's slammed as just another DEI hire, coasting on her identity rather than her talent. It's not until I found this interesting because she filmed Snow White in Europe, right? And you would think living in Europe for a year, like you might enjoy stuff, but she's such a New York liberal that she's like, it's not until you have to go around the world filming in different cities that you realize how grateful you are for the diversity of New York. When I came home from my year in Europe, going to my bodega where people speak Spanish to me, do they not speak Spanish in Europe? I'm just curious. I was like, oh my God, I missed you, Enrique. Her appointment as the apple-eating stepdaughter of the evil queen drew instant ire online, with many promising to boycott the film due to the woke casting. To them, the actress's Colombian heritage disqualified her from playing the princess from Disney's 1937 musical fantasy, described as having hair as black as ebony and skin as white as snow. Now, what's interesting is that the movie has retconned this to say, as for that line about skin as white as snow, it fell back to another version of Snow White that was told in history, where the infant survived a snowstorm that occurred when she was a baby. And so the king and queen decided to name her Snow White to remind her of her resilience. One of the core points of our film for any young woman or young person is remembering how strong you actually are. So that's how they're getting around the whole skin as white as snow thing. She called aspects of the original Snow White story weird and said that the 1937 film's prince literally stalked Snow White. Overnight.
Weird.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Overnight, online trolls took shots at Zegler's disdain for the animated classic, deeming her unworthy of portraying the OG Disney heroine.
I just want to say real quick, and I asked around, and in no version of Snow White ever, in the history of ever, is there a version where she's left to die in the snow.
Yeah. The love story is very integral. A lot of people wrote that we weren't doing that storyline anymore, but we were always doing that. It just wasn't what we were talking about on that day. However, she did call the prince a stalker and how Snow White didn't need no man. It's par for the course for an outspoken young woman in the public eye. I've watched women get torn down my whole life, my whole career. We'll watch it in the election that's upcoming. We're going to witness that for a long time, I fear. Sometimes it can feel like we're going back. It certainly felt that way when it was happening. But then she says that disconnecting from social media makes it harder for her to speak about causes that she cares about, such as being an advocate for Palestinians when she came out and said, "Free Palestine," at the end of one of her quotes. Of course, Newsweek wrote that Zegler was on a collision course with her star Gal Gadot, who served for 2 years as a soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces before making it as an actress. But despite the blowback, Zegler wants to continue to use her platform to advocate for the Palestinian people. And then it goes on to talk about her Broadway turn and how Spielberg basically plucked her from obscurity and put her in a movie. But the funniest part were these comments where basically she's like, everyone who's commenting here just says she's so unlikable. Nobody wants to watch Snow White because of her. But that's kind of the breakdown of this puff piece that Variety published about Rachel Zegler. They're really trying to rehabilitate her image, but in trying to do so, they just make her even more unlikable and seem more disconnected. And so, Tom, I know that you have a lot to say about this. I'm going to throw it to you first. What's your take on Rachel Zegler slapping back or clapping back against toxic fans?
Honestly, I think this is part of a bigger overall campaign that's going on right now that can be put together with all the stuff that's been leading up to it the last few weeks, with all the X posts, the rewriting Ripley stuff, and now you had the Hollywood Reporter come out and do a story, and I think it was either Deadline or somebody else also do a story, or maybe it was Variety. Variety did it. On the toxic fandom bit. So like this whole thing feels like it's coordinated by Disney or people around Disney to kind of point fingers at these toxic fans. Because in the one story, if I remember right how it was written, almost every other studio is trying to get a group of what they are calling super fans together to try and avoid, stirring up the pot, as it were, online every time they announce something or do something. And Disney's the only one who's like actively against that, or seems to be fighting against that. I don't know if you guys got that same impression, but
yeah, we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But anything in particular about Rachel Zegler?
Like on the other hand, like again, I just think it's all part of the same scheme. I mean, she's somebody that we were supposed to like, we were supposed to embrace, and pretty much the entire audience has just rejected her.
Yeah, Brian, I think that she's up there with Brie Larson in terms of unlikability. What's your take on Rachel Zegler trying to basically rehab her image and fight against toxicity?
She needs to stay off TikTok, and she needs to get a publicist.
Well, she has a publicist, but otherwise, why would this article have been written?
I mean, it's true, but she needs like a publicist that steals her phone and only posts what is appropriate, because she is too young and too just ignorant and entitled to post whatever she wants. And when she goes on one of these interviews, someone needs to be with her, like a guardian. Basically, she's a child, and she needs a little more management from Disney.
What she needs, Brian, is some electrodes plugged into the back of her neck with somebody on the other end of them that every time she opens her mouth and says something stupid, they shock her.
Well, then she'd just be shocked constantly, though, Butters.
So, she does say some very stupid things. I feel like she's just like she's the brain virus has taken over, and it's young. It's also a very young person thing. Like when you're in your early 20s, you're just stupid. Like maybe you're cute, maybe you're talented, but you're also pretty stupid.
True.
And stupid people, when you give them like this massive platform, they're gonna say stupid things, and she says stupid things constantly, and here we are. Like this is the problem. Like, thank God when I was 20, there was no X. Because I would have been canceled at 21, 100%.
Well, Philip, how is it that there are actresses out there like Sydney Sweeney, for instance, that can, go on press junkets and do interviews and like actually grow in popularity, whereas with Mrs. Zegler here, or Ms. Zegler, basically she's been torn down her entire life, her entire career, and with the upcoming election, we're going to see even more of that.
I think she's just. I just feel like she's extremely privileged to be where she is right now, and just I think she's just trying to like break down the the foundation of what Disney used to be. I think her coming in, she's trying to make a name for herself, and I think she's not resonating with a lot of her original Disney fan base who like the thing is, if she came in and not said anything about the story, not said anything weird, I think everyone would just be like, oh, she doesn't look the part, but let's see what she can do. I think that's how everyone is for like TV shows and movies, right? Like first thing when I saw Heath Ledger cast as Joker, I'm like, no freaking way. That guy from Brokeback Mountain, like no way, dude. He's
100%. Everyone was ragging it. Yep.
Yeah. And then we saw the trailer, and then you saw that one scene where he's like, he's in an interrogation. We were like, holy crap! Like I'm in for this.
100%.
And that's how it should be. It's like same thing with like a bunch of movies that came out. It's like even TV shows such as what's it called again? One Piece. I'm like, oh, One Piece, this looks sort of bad, and then you watch it, like, oh, it just blows you away. So if she just kept her mouth shut and just let her, acting,
let the work speak for itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. But Sydney Sweeney, on the other hand, she knows what she has, and she's not afraid to flaunt it, which I love sharing on X.
She's charming and she's not political. That's why it works for her.
Yep.
She's got some really good assets. So
and she's got a lot to share. She has a lot to show.
Yeah.
A lot
She's
to
got
give
a lot of talent. What
do you think about her assets?
Look at Odin's. Look at
Odin.
Well, hold on. So I am going to throw this to Odin, but Odin, I wanted to ask you. So like the biggest problem, and we saw this when Brie Larson was making the rounds for Captain Marvel and stuff like that, is that you have these actresses who get extremely political, but it's not so much that they're political, it's that they're anti-male, they hate men, they are very public in their disdain for people who are critical of them, and then they get hyper political. And when Rachel Zegler was making the rounds for like Shazam and stuff like that, and she was promoting the live action version of Snow White, she was talking about how like the whole like Prince Charming thing was creepy and weird, and how like this Snow White was intersectional and diverse, and basically just interjecting every type of political thing that didn't need to be in a children's fairy tale, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on why Rachel Zegler is so unlikable?
Well, I think you have to kind of understand a bit about her own history. I mean, the reason why she got as big as she did was because she was on Instagram and social media, and she got famous really on at least online circles because she is actually a very talented singer. And so a lot of the clips that she had of her singing different show tunes, singing different songs or renditions of songs got very, very big, very, very popular, very fast. And so that's why when I'm looking at this news about her getting obviously the role of Snow White, which we've known about for a long time now, and obviously has been a huge headache for Disney and everyone else involved, I then hear this news about her being cast as Juliet on Broadway, and my immediate thought is, this is what happens when you have someone who honestly should not even be in our discussion right now. Because if she was just a random Broadway actress, no one will be talking about this. It's because of the fact that she transitioned to doing movies, and because of the fact that she's been doing more mainstream films, taking on characters that are supposed to be of a certain type. That is the reason why she's gotten any attention whatsoever. Because if she, again, was staying in her theater bubble, right, then no one would have a problem really with what she's saying, and no one would really be talking about what she's saying. It's because she's now in these more mainstream spaces and how obnoxious she is in those spaces. Because, again, I think about how if she had just been staying on Broadway, just been staying in that theater space, again, if she would have gotten cast as Juliet, no one would really be talking about that a whole lot, because anyone in the theatrical space would be basically saying, "Oh yes, go queen, yes girl," and would be saying the same exact thing back to her. Just like the same people who were in her space on Instagram, etc., the people that were following her for musical talents, they were also following her eventually because she started to actually speak out about these issues. All of the issues that she speaks out about and that she is promoting are all things that typical theater kids are going to be fully behind. And so since that's already her core audience and demographic that existed before she even got involved in like mainstream movies and things like that, I think that's the reason why she doesn't understand why it's a problem, because she's just appealing to the people she's been interacting with for years, for decades. Whereas this newer audience that she has now been thrust into because of her choices and because of the roles that she's taken on are like, yeah, this is not what we want from Hollywood actors. This is not what we want from people taking on certain roles in these various IPs. So again, going back to what I think Brian was mentioning about having a handler. Honestly, I think her agent just needs to be like, all right, let's just move away from Hollywood for a bit and let's just let you be on Broadway, because then you could just be you and everyone will be happy and no one will really say anything.
Well, I also think it's telling that she's very much part of that New York liberal elite, kind of cadre. It's not so much the theater crowd; it's the New York liberal elite crowd.
But they're the same. They're one and the same in many ways, because it's the elite that are at every show every weekend. And I went to school up there for about 4 years, and so I got to see that group, that crowd, like in person, like often, and they are one and the same. It's kind of creepy.
The girl from Hackensack.
And Mr. Butters.
Yeah.
It's so difficult for a young lady like her to be picked out of obscurity by Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest living filmmakers ever, and put in as the leading lady in her movie. Like, how bad do you feel for Rachel Zegler?
I don't feel bad for Rachel Zegler at all. You always throw me for a loop. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say to you right now. But I have a couple thoughts. First off, I'm wondering how upset Tom Holland is right now that he didn't get Rachel Zegler to be his Juliet.
Oh, poor Tom.
Poor
Tom. I don't know.
So,
that guy is just getting wrecked by Hollywood.
He's probably like, what the fuck? Why can't Rachel Zegler come to London and be my Juliet over here?
What's going on right now?
What's happening?
He's like, fire my agent. I don't understand this.
I was Spider-Man, goddammit.
I want to be in that new. I want to be in a new hip version of
come on, guys.
Romeo and Juliet. Yeah.
I play Spider-Man. All right. I just want to have a nice looking girl. Okay.
That's right. And
I'm
secondly,
not a puffer.
Come on, guys.
and secondly,
I can prove
I'm wondering. Yeah. Secondly, I'm wondering after Snow White comes out and it gets eviscerated in the world and doesn't make any money, and underperforms for probably half of what they're projecting. If she's going to come out with a new diss track, a la Amanda Stenberg, and try to chew everybody out on YouTube in a fun way, So
she definitely sing better than Amanda Stenberg.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
So I'm looking forward to that when it comes out here, whenever. And just more nonsense of people with social media saying shit they shouldn't do, like I do all the time. So whatever. So I wish I could pick up some traction, say something dumb, and get viral.
Yeah, you just say dumb stuff all the time. That never goes viral.
But then it goes viral. Then it's he's just dumb.
Yeah, so, exactly.
It's like, okay, this is true. So yeah,
you need to be in a Disney production, Mr. Butters.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, guys. Speaking of stuff that is terrible and getting a lot of backlash, let's talk a little bit about Joker 2 and how it's basically pushing back against fans. And I know that some people on this panel have seen it, some people haven't. I've been spoiled on the ending, so I can kind of talk about that a little bit, but we're going to try to avoid spoilers in our discussion. But this article from Rolling Stone came out with the very provocative headline, Joker Folie à Deux has a message for fans, which is go fuck yourselves. Now, what's interesting about this article is that no one on the production actually told fans to go fuck themselves. This was something that the Rolling Stone journalist, and I put that in quotes, basically came up with as the leading headline for this travesty
funnily enough,
article.
That's what Folie à Deux actually translates out to, is go fuck yourself.
Yes, indeed.
This is clearly
but I saw a post on X today where basically there was a woman who put up a screenshot of the available seats for her theater that was showing Joker 2, and it was like empty. It was essentially empty, and she's like, I don't understand how a $1 billion grossing hits sequel can have so few people want to see it. And I replied, I basically said, first of all, men don't go to the theater to see musicals. If they want to see it, they'll wait for it to come out on home video. But any guy who goes to see a musical, his girlfriend is dragging him to it. But when it comes to the women, no women want to go to the theater to see a grimdark comic book movie with a leading man who is not attractive, right? So like, it doesn't appeal to anyone out there, really. The big question critics and audiences have been asking is, who was this movie made for? And nobody seems to be able to answer that. I think it was made for the director. I forget his name, Todd Phillips.
Todd Phillips.
Yeah. So basically, Todd Phillips made this movie for himself because he was like, I didn't want to make a sequel, but since I'm cashing the check, I'm just going to do what I want, and I don't care. And I'd love to hear from people on the panel who here has seen Joker 2. I know Brian and Tom have. Okay. So Odin, let's start with you. What's your take on Joker 2, and does it tell fans to go fuck themselves?
So I would say that there are parts of the film that I enjoy for sure. However, the film clearly is a huge middle finger to fans. And it honestly feels like, and I might be digging too deep into this because in my brain, it's like I have to come up with something, because when you have a film like Joker, which is such a huge success, not only creatively, but also box office wise, and then a sequel comes forth from it, you would think, oh, okay, at least it's going to have to, try and do some of those same things from before, right? It's the thing that sometimes sequels do, where it's not really creative. It's just hitting the same beats as before. And we are critical of that, rightly so, but at least it's there. This film just didn't do that. And so I have to figure out, okay, what is his actual motivation? And so my only thought that I have to actually try to give it a meaning is that his idea was, oh, I only intended this to be one movie, and then the studio made me make a second one. And so I decided to make this movie in a way that would basically be a huge middle finger to the people who made me make the film, and also to the fans of the first one that were clamoring for a sequel. It's like, oh, you wanted a sequel? Well, here it is. That's kind of how it comes across. But I think that's also being itself generous to the creative mind, quote unquote creative mind behind the movie itself. Because really, up until the last third of the movie, things are working to a point where if they had a good payoff, it would have been a decent movie. It would have been fine, right? It would have been, nothing to write home about, but it also would have been something that I think most people would probably walk away saying, yeah, really didn't need that, but it was okay. But because that last third is there, that's when you basically get this, you have the character of Arthur Fleck becoming a major beta, which is already like oh gosh. And then you've got, and I won't go into spoilers, right? But you have this thing at the end that honestly, to me, came across as oh, you really like this thing? You really like what was going on here? Well, yeah, never mind about that. We'll just put a bookend on all of it. So could have been a lot better than what it actually was. I think there are some good things in it. I think that the performances, for the most part, are pretty good. There's a great scene that happens with this character from the first film, Puddles, who is a little person. And it was honestly my favorite sequence in the movie, because that actor did a very good job, I thought. And I really felt his emotion. But other than that, yeah, it's just a giant mess. And I do think that there's a good reason why the overwhelming response from people going to see this movie because of that ending, because that's where it leaves you, right? Is yeah, this movie sucks, and I don't ever want to see it again, talk about it again. And I think this film is going to end up being a pretty massive box office bomb because of it.
Now, Brian from the Popcast, I know that you saw it, but so did your brother, who seemed to like it. What's your take on Joker 2?
So he liked it, and at first he told me, he goes, "Oh, this is actually a masterpiece. I really enjoyed it." And then he went back and watched the first Joker, and he was like, "Oh wait, no, Phil's made a lot of mistakes. This didn't work." And he was all over the place. At first, he was all about it, and then he didn't like it. My brother is he's a very smart guy. He looks at everything very intelligently, and he really overthinks a lot of scenes. When it comes to movies and TV, like explosions and pretty girls and dragons. And so when I'm watching this, I'm like, this is not, it's not made for me.
It's artsy.
I heard
it's
the movie had an
artsy-fartsy.
explosion, but none of the other two things that you like.
Right, no dragon. There was no dragon, so I'm done. I'm out. No, but seriously, the musical numbers were jarring. Like they interrupted scenes. It just didn't work for me on any level. And you know what? I'm starting to think that I just don't like Lady Gaga. I don't like her as a singer, and I don't like her as an actor, and I just don't like her. And I don't think she adds much to it besides a nice voice. And if all you have is a nice voice, well, when it comes to movies, you need more than that, and it didn't work for me.
You know, speaking of Gaga, Tom, it seems like as soon as they casted Lady Gaga, they decided to make it into a musical because that's really her draw. It's like people know her from singing, and was turning this into a musical really the thing that communicated to the audience, hey, go fuck yourselves?
Maybe. I don't know. See, the musical thing, you can almost still put that aside, and the movie still has a ton of problems besides that, right? Like, that's the issue, is the music is like just one of the laundry lists of issues with this film. And again, it's kind of hard to discuss it without getting into too many spoilers, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody who might actually want to go see it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it almost makes sense once you do the backtracking, because Todd Phillips was a producer on A Star Is Born. So he already has a history with Lady Gaga. Mm-hmm. So he clearly wanted to make a musical or another movie with Lady Gaga. That's probably more of his motivation here. But at the same time, again, nobody had a problem with Harley being in the story or anything like that. The biggest problem with the movie is you have 15 minutes worth of story in a padded out 2-hour movie that is really just kind of depressing at the end of the day for various reasons we won't get into, especially if you were invested in the character in the first place. And like, you know, Odin and I were kind of disagreeing a little bit about the scene. I agree with him to a point, like, yeah, he's right. But it also, to me, I felt like the scene that he was talking about with Puddles, it also kind of went against the whole idea of what the first movie was. And I think this is the core problem the audience is having with the film, is even though he was a bad guy and he's not somebody you're supposed to root for, you still want to see his journey. And as the Joker, that's where you see him at the end of the movie in a way almost grow into himself, or at least this new character. And then all this movie is trying to do is go back and forth between this idea of whether or not the Joker is real or not. And when you would think somebody like Harley gets added into the mix where you already had, you know, crazy meeting power, when you have somebody who shouldn't be who, you know, would normally encourage something like that, somebody who sees him as a god, right? That should just give him even more of a complex, when it has the absolute opposite effect. She literally fucks the Joker out of him.
Wow.
Like, it's a scene in the movie. It is just, look, I get it. What Todd Phillips is trying to do, I get it. And I'm sick and tired of a lot of people saying that you just don't like it because it wasn't what you were expecting, or you don't understand it, when it's like, no, that's not true. First of all, I understand it and I can still not like it. Second of all, you call a movie Joker and you're setting up expectations, right? Like the first movie, we get it. You surprised a lot of people, but now you're making a sequel to that and you know you're making a Joker movie, right? Like the first time out, it was a movie that was changed to a Joker movie just so they could get it made. This time, the audience is coming in, and I get it. Some people are like, oh, you're just mad because you didn't get Bonnie and Clyde or Natural Born Killers. It's like, is that our fault?
Right.
No, because you called the movie Joker.
Right.
And when you have an expectation, especially when you end the movie the first time the way you did the first movie, you're like, okay, so this is going to be the next evolution. And even if it isn't Joaquin Phoenix as the proper Joker, you're still set up with this idea that we're going to see something at some point that does resemble the Joker, because you're calling your movie Joker.
Right. Hello.
Is Batman in this movie?
No.
No. In fact, there's a few Gotham cameos, but not nearly as bad as the first movie, which is even weirder, right? Because you're like, so they went even more out of their way the first time, it seems like, to make it more Gotham/Batman oriented, to where this time it's so tangential that if you're not paying attention, you barely hear it or notice it. Like the DA is Harvey Dent. Oh, okay. And one of the guys in the cells is named Bullock. That's one of his friends. I don't know if that's just a wink wink or what the fuck it is. But again, like that's the closest. There's like one or two other characters. But yeah, it's just, sorry. This movie is giving me nerd rage right now. So I need to calm down.
No Commissioner Gordon.
For good reason, though. For good reason. There's a lot of problems that the film has from a narrative standpoint, especially if it's going to try to exist within this universe, right? And it clearly is trying to exist within this universe. And so the fact that he is, or anyone's going to try to act as if somehow this is it's given an exception from having to play by certain rules or certain narrative frameworks is a bit ridiculous. I will say this much, though. I did not mind the musical scenes. I will disagree with the point that was made earlier. I do not think that you have to be dragged along by your girlfriend or wife to see a musical to be able to enjoy it as a man.
Man card. Give it.
But the problem with the musical scenes is none of these
Greatest
songs
of all time
actually.
are musicals. Sing in the Rain. Are you going to go after Singing in the Rain?
The difference between these
I'm not watching it at the theater.
is that these songs have very little to actually do with the film, and they barely move the movie along, and at best at times they maybe fill in one line. Right? Like, so they're like, if anything, you have a musician here. Why are you not writing original music? Right?
It feels like it interrupts it interrupts the movie. Like, it feels like it interrupts
show
the
tunes.
It's
and
a
they're all
novelty,
old show
basically.
tunes. So like, if you're not somebody who knows most of these songs, like this is why I'm sure the kids aren't really getting into this movie, because they don't know any of these songs from TikTok.
Right. Yeah, these aren't TikTok songs.
If you'd have got Boz Lerman to come in and handle the music, if you're going to do a jukebox musical, why isn't like Steve Miller Band, The Joker in here, and all these other kind of songs that actually make sense? There's one song in the whole movie that makes sense, and that's the Joker song, and that's probably one of the best sequences in the whole movie. But as Brian said, almost every single one of the musical sequences just brings the movie to a dead halt. Now, I like musicals. I actually like them, Odin. And in this case, I feel like it was an albatross around this movie's throat.
Is it okay? But is it any weirder than Jack Nicholson Joker having a weird Prince fetish?
No, that was a better musical sequence.
You think, really? I always thought
this movie was so bad, and somebody just brought this
weird
up.
And cringy. So,
it's funny because I was going to say this is my original review. Somebody brought up the Blues Brothers in the chat. This movie was so bad it retroactively made the Blues Brothers 2000 good.
Oh, look, okay.
Well,
2000 is not a good film, but the music's fantastic in that movie.
Exactly.
You can't deny that.
It's now, but this has made that movie go up the ranks in musicals because of that.
Well, guys, I want to throw this to Philip. So, Philip, the original Joker was basically just a reskinned version of Taxi Driver with a Batman skin on it. But it really explored kind of like this this kind of like deep-seated like male anger at like how society kind of like treats men, and that actually got it a lot of criticism from the critics who are very pro-feminist, anti-male type stuff. What's your take on this idea that like, this is a sequel that's basically just saying like, fuck you to the audience. We don't care about these deeper themes. We don't care about how much you love the first movie. We're just going to do what we want, and we don't care if you like it.
So the first movie wasn't supposed to bring there was a huge controversy, right, saying that like, oh, this movie's going to bring out all of the incels, it's going to be crazy amount of violence that's going to be happening. Just take a look at The Dark Knight Rises, something like that's going to happen again, right? And then of course you get a stabbing or like a knife fight or something like that, Frozen 2. But the thing is, I think the director or maybe the writers, whoever's in charge of how the story went, is just, we weren't supposed to like the Joker in the first movie, but a lot of people resonated with him. And it's like, look, it's sort of like the incels. We've had enough, like if I wasn't married or anything like that, I probably would have been an incel too, but I probably still am. But the thing is, in this one, it was like, we're going to completely deconstruct what you thought about him. We're going to I didn't see the movie, but I heard about it. And the whole third act completely just like, whatever you liked about the first one, we're just going to completely just flip it on you. And we're just going to completely just, subvert your expectations. But yeah, exactly like what Tom said. It's just, this is a movie about Joker. We want to see the whole thing, the whole like chaos that he caused snowball out of control and him rising to whatever he is. And then with hints of like, Harley and him singing along. Like, I have no problems with musical either. But the thing is, it's just, from what I heard, just they didn't do it. And I think they purposely did it. And I think Todd Phillips was just like, you know what? They gave me a crap ton of money. I'm just going to do whatever I want. And I don't care if it makes any money. I think that's exactly what happened in this movie.
Mr. Butters, we've had a track record lately of studios taking beloved IPs and basically saying, we're not making this for you, to the fans. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Why do you think Hollywood has such a hard time giving the audience what they want?
I have no idea. I don't know. Again, you're asking me questions I don't have an answer to. I hate it. You do this all the time. Why do you do this to me? I don't understand. But I don't know. I haven't watched this movie. I'm not going to watch this movie. I have no interest in it. And I don't understand why they would waste their money on something that can't these studios, can't they see what's going on while these movies are being made and go to the director and go, hey, why are you doing this? Why are you going in this direction? People aren't going to watch this. People are going to be upset about this. You're making a FU movie to the fans. What's going on? I mean, is there no studio control? It's all we ever hear in all these movies that get ruined, like the Star Wars stuff. There's too much studio control. They ruin these movies because there's too much studio interference. Well, where was the studio interference in this one? That's my question. If this movie is so bad and so terrible, why did they let him get away with this?
I do want to say that Warner Brothers does have a long history of kind of like letting directors kind of like do their own thing. It was a brave decision to let Todd Phillips basically do whatever it was he wanted with this. But I want to ask Brian, since he's our resident DC movies expert. So like this movie was greenlit long before James Gunn came along and took over the DCU. Right. And it's obvious that with this movie, there's not going to be any further, Joker sequels.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, do you think that between this and the Penguin and, the next Matt Reeves Batman movie, Battinson Part 2, that they're just trying to get these off the books before they move on with the Gunverse?
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. Like get these things that were already started before I got here, get them out, get them done, call them, a different universe or whatever. What do they call it?
Elseworlds.
And then move on with my plan. I'm sure that's what Gunn's thinking. In fact, Gunn keeps dropping a lot of information like that new dynamic duo announcement, and I'm not sure if that announcement wasn't planned for that purpose, because it came out right when the Penguin and the Joker was coming out, and he wants to make sure that
announcement was for the origin story of Robin, correct?
Right. Yeah. That wasn't a coincidence that you're announcing your Batman verse project at the same exact time these things are coming.
It's actually not part of his Batman verse. It's a totally separate thing. It's just his production company.
Another Elseworlds thing?
Yes. It's just his production company is part of it. That's the only reason he's connected to it. It's not.
You need to stop making Elseworlds.
Yeah. Yeah, that was specifically written in the press release that it is not part of the Batman continuity.
Oh God.
But it is going to be this really weird puppetry mixed with animation thing. I don't like nightmare-inducing shit.
I don't know. I do think they're trying to get. I think he's trying to burn through all this previous complicated structure so he can just do his own thing.
Speaking of doing your own thing, guys, let's talk a little bit about Disney ruining Star Wars, doing their own thing. There was a big article that came out in the Hollywood Reporter this past week that basically asked the question, is Disney bad at Star Wars? An analysis.
Yes.
This is probably one of the crappiest analysis I've ever read in my entire life, because basically they just walked through every single movie and TV show that Disney has done that has to do with Star Wars and talked about how great they were. But I'm going to go through a couple of highlights here. So one of the big things that Disney's been struggling with is basically taking on some big name Hollywood people and then canceling their Star Wars projects and stuff like that. They talk about Taika Waititi, Kevin Feige, Guillermo del Toro, Josh Trank, David S. Goyer, Damon Lindelof, Colin Trevorrow, Patty Jenkins, David Benioff, and D.B. Weiss, and all these guys. Rian Johnson's trilogy is still up in the air as well. But then we also have the toxic fans, the racists, and basically they talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi, where it was like it was a winner in the ratings. It opened to 1.3 billion minutes of viewing, according to Nielsen, even bigger than The Mandalorian Season 3's opening, and concluded with a strong 860 million for its finale. Obi-Wan Kenobi was a limited series, however, and there are no current plans for more episodes, even though we've heard rumors of a Season 2. Then they talked about The Acolyte, which received largely positive critical reviews, 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, and sparked a raging culture war battle that once again exposed the ugly side of online fandom. The Acolyte's backlash and criticism is difficult to parse as many fans detail their creative objections to the show's storytelling and its bold take on Jedi lore. Just because we didn't like it doesn't mean we're racist, basically, although some other Acolyte bashes were, well, clearly racist. The Acolytes, so basically they're just calling the fans who didn't like it racist.
Right.
The Acolytes' premiere ratings were the lowest to date of a live-action Star Wars series launch. Then the show's ratings sunk further, with The Acolyte dropping out of the Nielsen's top 10 entirely for several weeks, not typical for a Star Wars show. It was impossible for Disney to spin this one as a concluded story. The season ended on a cliffhanger, but The Acolyte is not getting a season 2. The cancellation has been portrayed by some defenders as baffling, even conspiratorial, but the show's ratings, trend, and reception point to a pragmatic decision on the studio's part. Even the Acolyte haters should give a show credit. They're talking about the Skeleton Crew for a story that's far removed from the Star Wars saga. How do you make Star Wars feel fresh and new while still feeling like Star Wars and not like, say, Rebel Moon? You don't need to make Star Wars fresh and new. You just need to make it good. What about Disney Plus subscriptions? They talk about how Disney Plus is doing pretty good subscriptions. They kind of call out Kathleen Kennedy here, but they say Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, who has produced some of the most beloved and iconic movies in cinema history, in addition to successfully relaunching Star Wars in cinemas with Force Awakens and trailblazing into TV with The Mandalorian, has overseen the Star Wars franchise since 2012. Any mention of Kennedy amid a look at the Star Wars track record cannot be separated from the fact that she has been the target of hateful and ugly fandom attacks. South Park also piled on by mocking her in a recent episode. And then they talk about the failure of Galactic Star Cruiser, which cost over $1 billion and basically got shut down because it wasn't making any money. And then this is the conclusion of the analysis, right? Is Disney bad at Star Wars? On balance, no. But here's another question. Could Disney be better at Star Wars? Clearly, yes. So this is a really big piece of shit article that I had to read through and get these highlights out of. But I want to open it up to the panel because we all know, we've been saying for years, Disney's really bad at Star Wars. In fact, it's so bad that they've basically, tanked the franchise. And there's actually a part in this article where they talk about how, the only sign of a damaged franchise is that people are apathetic and don't care about it anymore. And I'm like, Mr. Butters, you're right there. You literally changed your name. Yeah, because you were such a Star Wars fan, but now you're just apathetic to it. So you're moving on. What's your take on this article?
This article I actually found, I actually kind of thought it was an article you would have written and but changed it up a little bit and back in your comrade Russian literature.
My Russian collusion days. Yeah.
Yes, back in those days. That's kind of what I kind of felt. This thing was an interesting read for me because basically everything he said, he was correct about. There's been Star Wars sucks now. The guy had no problem talking about how many failures there have been in Star Wars. He came up with, The Mandalorian was okay. Rogue One was okay. At least the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian. And the cartoons are mostly accepted as being pretty decent, and that's fairly accurate. And everything else is bad. And that's kind of what I got out of the article. But it's okay if he says it because he's not a toxic YouTuber crazy person like we all are. So it's basically what I got was it's okay for people like him to say these things, but it's not okay for people like us to say these things. And other than that, I thought he was kind of right. At least there's people on the other side of the fence here that are realizing that Disney Star Wars is not good. And and yeah, he's right. Apathy. That's where I'm at. I don't. It's just if something comes out, I'll probably watch it, and I hope it's good. But if nothing ever came out again, I wouldn't give a shit ever.
I actually strongly disagree with you, Mr. Butters, because his take on Star Wars is actually far rosier than what it actually is. And any criticism that he lists in this article is pointed towards the toxic minority of fan bases.
That's basically what I said. Okay.
Well, you said that he was right in his assessment. But Brian from the podcast, what's your take at this? Is Disney bad at Star Wars? Is this article correct?
Yeah, Disney's bad at Star Wars, but so is Kathleen Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone involved with Star Wars right now, if their name isn't Favreau, is pretty bad at Star Wars. And I would argue that Favreau doesn't really care for it so much for anything that doesn't involve his own project. So, the problem with Star Wars right now, and you're totally right, is apathy. Mm-hmm. There are fans of a franchise that love it, fans of a franchise that love it so much that they hate it. And then there is the third group of people that have grown to hate something to the point where they no longer care about it. And that's where I'm at. So I used to love Star Wars. I have the original tapes. I have the original laser discs. I have lightsabers and mugs and all that stuff, dude. I got a bathrobe that looks like a Jedi temple, Jedi robe. All those things. I had these 2 4-foot statues of C-3PO and Darth Vader that was made out of scrap metal. That was in my garage for the longest time, just waiting for a place to go. Well, recently, I sold them to a buddy of mine because they're taking up space and they're heavy.
There you go.
And I'll tell you why. Because I no longer care about them. Something that I had for years that I was looking for a place to put in my office, I no longer care about. And if the Star Wars tapes weren't already on my wall, already mounted, then they wouldn't be. I have stopped caring about Star Wars. When I see Star Wars news, I'm like, I don't care. I don't care about Darth Vader. I don't care about any of the characters anymore. Like, I honestly can give a crap about anything Star Wars. Every time I see a Star Wars news, I move on. Every time I see a Star Wars clip or a YouTube video, I move on. I'm so bored and so over the entire franchise that I want nothing to do with it. It's the same as like if you were wanting me to watch Singing in the Rain. I don't care. I'm not saying it's bad. Do whatever you want. If you like it, great. I am so off of the Star Wars train that it feels like I was never on. That's where we're at. And there's a large group of fans that feel exactly like I do, where they're just over it. They're like, all right, moving on to the next franchise.
Brian, you mentioned Jon Favreau, and there's actually a funny part in this article that I want to highlight for you, where they're talking about, some of the upcoming shows that they announced, that some of which haven't survived. And there's a part here where it says Rangers of the New Republic was scrapped for reasons. And that's all they mention about why that was scrapped.
With a link back to the Gina Carano article.
Yeah. But I just find it funny that the author of this article was like, oh, it was for reasons. And then he just moves on. Yeah.
This guy, he was trying so hard to not offend anybody on the Hollywood side of the aisle here. He's just trying to point out, it's like, hey man, Disney needs some help. They don't make good Star Wars. Maybe they need to start making some good Star Wars. And like I said earlier, he just listed the same things that we do of what we think is good and what we think is bad. And there's 4 good things and 15 bad. And, the track record speaks for itself. And it's Kathleen Kennedy's fault. So,
Mr. Philip Chan, it seems like what he's actually doing here in this article is he's trying to frame Star Wars as such a challenge to get right. Like he basically says, like, how do you make Star Wars feel fresh and new while still feeling like Star Wars and not like something like Rebel Moon, which was Zack Snyder's famous take on like the Star Wars he wanted to make. So what's your take on that? Is Star Wars hard to make? Is it hard to make good Star Wars?
I would say it's hard for them to make Asians cool in Star Wars. It's like first and foremost, you got Kelly Marie Tran, who's already a terrible driver, runs into a black guy trying to save him. So what the hell are you doing? cringe ass kiss, and then you put in you finally put in Donnie Yen, a person who knows martial arts. You know, let's nerf him because he's too cool. Let's make him blind. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And then they bring in Osha, I love you, Osha. It's like, dude, shut up. And then they bring in the Filipino guy who's like, you know, like Seoul and Manny Jacinto. I think they were definitely underutilized. I think that it sucks for them. But then he's like, oh, hey, Osha, you want to, you know, Mayor Osha, you want to touch my lumpia? Dude, just make good stuff. And the thing is that whenever they have an Asian person in it, you know, it's like, you got to stop the Asian hate. All right. They don't care about Chinese people, Asian people, or whatever. And if they did that, it will be a little bit better. But in all seriousness, I think they just don't care.
What about Nien Nunb in Return of the Jedi? He's kind of Asian-esque, right?
I would say
Alien.
so.
Yeah, he was pretty cool. I like that guy.
Hey, Mr. Philip Chan, we have a message from our Latino audience, which is, don't stop Asian hate. Thank you, Polly. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
No, but it is interesting because like modern Star Wars, Disney Star Wars has been so defined by quote unquote diversity, but they don't seem to be able to get Asian characters right.
No, they don't. It's I don't
never
know
do.
why. It's just that look, you can write anyone to be a very good character, right? Like it's Kelly Marie Tran. You know, it's people said, oh, she got bullied off the internet, and she just couldn't take it. And it's just so in the last movie, Rise of Skywalker, it's just like, oh, let's just completely just silo her character. And like you could that's exactly what they did with Finn's character too. Like we thought he was gonna have some kind of big arc, and then it just
Nope.
you know, China doesn't like him. It's like, oh, you cater to China, you piece of shit. So,
I mean,
I don't
at
know,
least they haven't killed many of them.
Wait.
You know,
Wait. Why didn't China like him? That's the question.
because
Why?
China's fucking racist.
It's because they're racist. It wasn't. They don't like him because he said things about China or because he doesn't fit. No, it's because they didn't like him because he's black. That's the reason they didn't like him.
Yeah.
And so no one talks about that. It's crazy.
And remember the big deal they made about the lesbian kiss in Rise of Skywalker that they completely edited out for the Middle East and China?
Right. Yeah, of course.
I'm still mad at George Lucas for naming his only fat white guy Porkins. Okay, so I don't want to hear about your Asian hate. Okay.
Imagine that guy comes on that set. He goes, "All right, we need X-wing fighters. Hey, that guy, that's Porkins." The guy's like, "What the fuck?"
Poor Porkins.
And you're skinny. The guy's like,
And then they made him Wedge's gay lover. That's what Disney did with him. So,
"Oh
you know,
God, Disney is the worst." Like they have totally ruined something that I love so much. When you said Porkins, I had this like wave of nostalgia. I'm like, I love that. I love the original Star Wars. I read all the books, the comic books, dude. I was so stoked when I saw the Force Awakens trailer. I was on Disney's side. When he sold to Disney, I was like, dude, if anyone can take and bring home an amazing franchise, it's the billion-dollar multinational company with 100 years of entertainment on their belt. And then they just ruin it for me. They ruin it to a degree where it's not even hate, it's apathy. I hate it so much that I've gone, the mileage counter has gone to the point where I no longer care about anything Star Wars. Crazy.
Spoken like a true Disney investor, Brian.
Oh, and I'm invested in this company. No, I am. Dude, 80% of my portfolio is Disney. I am so upset with this company right now. My kids turned 13 recently. My wife, her second job is at Disney, and she's like, let's take them to Disneyland. We got free tickets. I'm like, cool, fine, let's go. And I'm sitting there in the line, and I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here? Why is anyone at this establishment? It's so corporate and gross. And you get there at 8 a.m., you can ride maybe 3 rides. You are basically cattle in a money farm. It's the worst experience ever. I hate Disney.
But this is for you, Mr. Butters. So let's make this trend. Stop fat fuck hate.
That's right.
Yes.
Stop it.
Hashtag
Yes.
stop that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hashtag
like
Porkins.
Asian hate's fine, but
Yeah.
making hate on obesity on fat people, that's not cool.
That's not cool.
Not cool.
Yeah. Tom Connors Jr. What are your thoughts on Disney being bad at Star Wars?
I just want to say we need to stop the Asian hate. I wish they would stop hating me so much. What is wrong with me?
Do you really want us to answer that, Tom?
Oh, bother.
Oh, bother.
Oh, Bob.
Oh, no. As far as Star Wars goes, what haven't we said about Star Wars so far?
Mhm.
Yeah, this article is nothing but a big, interference run on, for Disney and for Kathleen Kennedy. And the few things they do admit are just because, they have to, because obviously they'd be called out by any sane person. And what else can I really say at the end of the day that I haven't said about Kathleen Kennedy already? She rode that train for 40 years with Spielberg and Zemeckis and people like them. And when she actually got any sort of control, look what happens. And again, it doesn't really matter if she's gone this month, gone next year, gone 5 years from now. Nothing is going to change. Like, Dave Filoni and whoever else will just pick up that baton right where she left off and keep moving on. And I hate to break people's hearts. Jon Favreau is never going to take over Star Wars unless he has a very good reason to, or they offer him something that would make it, so much more worth it for him, because he'd have to basically not do anything else. He couldn't have any other career. Because that's kind of where James Gunn is at right now. Mm-hmm. James Gunn will not really be able to make anything that's not DC related for the next decade or so. So, yeah.
But to be fair, he's the head of the DC studio. So
that's what I'm saying. That's the only thing that might give Favreau, like, okay, you're the head of Star Wars now. You're the head of Lucasfilm.
Right.
But even if he was, how much time is he going to have creatively to do just a few Star Wars movies, let alone any other movies, right? Like James Gunn, that's his problem right now, is once Superman comes out, sure, he'll be attached to other projects, but it's going to be a while. He'll be lucky to be able to direct a movie every 2 years. Right.
Well, Tom, what do you think about this part in the article where they basically put South Park on blast for mocking such a beloved, iconic producer as Kathleen Kennedy?
Put a tick in it, make her gay.
Well, I mean, they were one of the first mainstream people to call him out. I mean, we all were doing it well in advance, but I think that's why we cheered, because it's like, finally, somebody else is acknowledging it besides us, And who better than the court jesters of the world?
Yeah, Odin, one of the interesting things about this article is basically this is an article that defends Disney's take on Star Wars. Like, they go through each and every Disney-produced Star Wars movie and TV show. They talk about the successes that it had, the challenges it faced, but they never talk about the thing that basically ruined this franchise, which was lack of vision and the injection of political propaganda that basically alienated the fan base. And when people started to complain, they were labeled as toxic. And then this article does nothing to dissuade that idea that basically Star Wars fans are terrible, awful people that just don't understand what Disney and Kathleen Kennedy are trying to do. What's your take on whether or not Disney is bad at Star Wars?
I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding at this point, right? If we just look at the movies for a second, let's see how those films did down the line, financially speaking, right? You look at Solo, A Star Wars Story, right? Probably the most well-known example of how far Disney had fallen. I mean, one of the worst box office performances that we'd seen, in fact, the worst performance that we'd seen for any Star Wars films. That film lost over $200 million at the box office. And then because of their vanity, because of their egos, they also ended up losing over $100 million on Rise of Skywalker, which made $1 billion at the box office. So the fact that they, especially towards the end of those films, prove that they were not able to drive out the same amount of people as they did with The Force Awakens, right? When everything was going their way, when there was a lot of excitement around Star Wars, where it was like this hopeful thing that a lot of people had, saying, oh, Star Wars is finally coming back. Okay, maybe we can finally start to get some really good stories again. And instead, we got a film, in the case of Force Awakens, which some people had called out early on that the film wasn't very good or that it wasn't leading anywhere. But there was at least something there for most people. And turns out, no, that was just destroyed completely by Rian Johnson. And then, of course, the last film, honestly, in many ways, is even worse than The Last Jedi, because it's just objectively a worse movie. I mean, I think that those damage was done by Last Jedi, but Rise of Skywalker is just also a garbage film to boot. So you look at those numbers, right? The numbers do not lie there. Then you go on to the shows and look at how poorly those shows have been doing. I mean, the most recent one, The Acolyte, got canceled because it couldn't even meet the most basic of standards for what is required on Disney Plus to get a second season. I mean, this is something that very few shows, it seems, on Disney Plus seem to actually reach or seem to be able to miss out on. Right, it's almost like the Netflix effect, where Netflix oftentimes has movies or shows, sometimes even in a series, where you think, why in the world are they still making that? I can't believe anyone's actually watching it. But apparently, enough people are to them to justify continuing to make it. They can't even do that for their most recent show, which they gave a lot of press to, which they gave a lot of overall endorsement of, as far as the way that it was being promoted, and rightfully, because it was complete and utter garbage. I think that this is just mind-numbing that anyone would actually defend and say Disney has done a good job at Star Wars when everything that we've seen either from the movies has been a massive catastrophic failure, especially the last two films that they've had in theatrical release, and the fact that also you look at what they've done with their shows and how many people that has turned off from the fan base, and to the point where even if you could get another season of Mandalorian out, or even if you could get something that had some fans behind it, it's going to be so much less than what you initially had with any of those first seasons of those shows.
And I think it's very telling that, like, I think if Kathleen Kennedy had her druthers, she'd have approved a second season of The Acolyte. Mm-hmm. But I think Disney stepped in and said, like, no, we're not giving you money for that. So I think it was Disney's call as opposed to Kathleen Kennedy's. But I think we can all agree that Disney is notoriously bad at making not only good Star Wars, but good movies in general. They just don't seem to know how to do them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Real quick, I want to give a big shout out to GJJ, who's been a member for 14 months. He has his members chat where he just said, "Hey, I'm here. Nothing
Nice to see you.
Nothing big."
Yeah.
But guys, Tom mentioned earlier in the show that we're going to get into this whole toxic fandom thing, and this is a big thing. That this is the theme of today's show. As a matter of fact, all the stories we're covering today are really all about how Hollywood just doesn't like its audience. I think the big thing here to notice is that Hollywood believes that they can dictate to audiences what they should like, what they should believe, what they should think. And that's not how reality works. Like, Hollywood is a service industry. They're making a product to be consumed. And so if they don't listen to their customers, they're always going to be disappointed because their customers are eventually going to rebel. And there's this big article in Variety called Toxic Fandom, How Hollywood is Battling Fans Who Are Just Out for Blood, from social media boot camps to superfan focus groups. And this is another really blatantly propagandistic article that's meant to kind of spin the idea that it's the fans who are the problem as opposed to the people making the content. One of the things that I really found interesting about this article, guys, I don't know if you saw this when you were reading it, but it completely glosses over the fact that audiences have started rebelling once they started injecting political propaganda into these really famous franchises, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Star Trek, all this stuff. Fans didn't care up until the point things got political. And then if they spoke out about it, they were considered toxic. But it's obviously causing enough of a problem, which means that we're winning, by the way. Fans are winning. But it's caused enough of a problem where studios are taking steps to address this thing. So one of the things is that it says here, those who did talk with Variety all agree that the best defense is to avoid provoking fandoms in the first place. In addition to standard focus group testing, studios will assemble a specialized cluster of superfans to assess possible marketing materials for a major franchise project. Now, keep in mind, this isn't about a group of superfan focus groups that are going to give them feedback on the actual making of the content. It's about the marketing of the content, the positioning. So the content's still going to be as political and shitty as it usually is, but the marketing isn't going to be so offensive to the super fans. And the studio execs say they're very vocal. They will just tell us, if you do that, fans are going to retaliate. These groups have led studios to alter projects. If it's early enough and the movie isn't finished yet, we can make those kinds of changes. Several studio insiders also say that they often put their talent through social media boot camp. In some cases, when a character is intentionally challenging a franchise's status quo, studios will, with the actor's permission, take over their social media accounts entirely. When things get really bad, especially involving threats of violence, security firms will scrub talent information from the internet to protect them from doxing. Makes me wonder why they haven't done this with Rachel Zegler, by the way. But I guess it's not so much her social media, it's her going out on camera and actually saying stupid stuff. But this paragraph really stood out to me when I was reading it. In some particularly egregious cases, a direct response has been necessary. In 2022, after Obi-Wan Kenobi actor Moses Ingram denounced the hundreds of racist messages sent about her role. There's nothing nobody can do about this. There's nothing anybody can do to stop this hate, she said. Lucasfilm posted a statement to its Star Wars social media accounts that read, in part, there are more than 20 million sentient species in the Star Wars galaxy. Don't choose to be a racist. The Star Wars accounts also shared a video of Obi-Wan star Ewan McGregor saying the abuse made him sick to his stomach, and that if you're sending her bullying messages, you're no Star Wars fan in my mind. Now, I just want to point out that the backlash against Moses Ingram didn't come from the fact that she was a black woman who was acting in the show. It came from the fact that her character was useless, stupid, and terribly written, and that she lashed out against fans in the first place, accusing people of racism simply for not liking her character. Mm-hmm. Later that year, the cast of Rings of Power condemned the relentless racism, threats, harassment, and abuse some of their castmates of color were being subjected to on a daily basis. And again, this is coming from fans of the source material that are like, there weren't black elves in Tolkien's original work. The fact that they were injecting DEI into a Lord of the Rings show was the thing that fans were upset about. It wasn't that they were racist or sexist or like whatever. In an August interview with Amazon MGM Studios TV chief Vernon Sanders about Rings of Power, the executive said that the show hadn't experienced the same racist hostility in advance of season 2 that had greeted its 2022 debut. And that's because people stopped watching. Nobody cares about Rings of Power season 2. Not enough to, speak out about it because season 1 proved how shitty it was. There is one other way to handle toxic fans on the internet. Stay off of it. I'm not online, so I'm protected, says frequent Marvel star Elizabeth Olsen. Generally, it's a lot of positive experiences of making kids happy. I ignore all the other stuff. So, guys, again, this is just another long line of articles that we were referencing today that were just so blatantly, spin control, damage control, that it actually made me kind of sick to my stomach to read this article. Mr. Butters, what's your take on the war against toxic fandom by Hollywood?
I think Hollywood just needs to start understanding that we really don't care what races and things are these characters. They just need to stick to the source material. They need to stick to the canon. That's it. That's all we want. We want quality entertainment. We don't want the DEI nonsense thrown in our faces in the politics all the time. That's it. It's really simple. Make good quality entertainment. What is that, Odin?
It's Godzilla -1.
Oh yeah. Well,
this is what we want.
That was
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, overrated. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. But
you'll like nuts in your peanut butter,
and yes,
and you hate this movie.
I wanted more Godzilla and less drama. I guess it's like, oh,
you're acting like it's Godzilla 2014 or something, man.
Listen, I gave it like 3.5 stars. It's a good movie. I'm not gonna lie, it's a good movie,
Yeah.
but it's not a 5-star masterpiece. It was the best movie of a really bad movie year. And how did we get put on this? Okay. But yeah.
We're saying good. We want good stuff. And I was like, we want good stuff.
More stuff like that. It would be fine. That would be fine. You're right.
Source material. This respects it.
Okay. That's
And
good.
I'm used to sitting here trying to defend the other Godzilla stuff.
Yeah.
Because people are comparing it to that. And it's like, dude, we're eating great right now as Godzilla fans. Shut up.
Sure. You're right. You're both right. I like both those movies. But okay, we'll talk about this another day.
Something else. Star Wars. Go back to Star Wars.
But
quit bringing Godzilla to this. Godzilla has nothing to do with this.
just give us entertainment that respects the source material. That's all I want. I don't need
Damn
no
you.
Don. I don't need no Don Lemonors in my Lord of the Rings. I don't need no husband and wife orc bullshit. I don't need
You don't need the Grand Elf.
no. Whatever. It's just a bunch of trash, and I'm tired of it. That's why I'm just kind of pivoting over to video games. I don't even watch TV anymore. I don't. I just play games. I kill bugs and robots on planets with black holes behind me, and I'm enjoying it. I'm having a great time. So I'm kind of removing myself from all of this kind of stuff. And when I do watch TV, I watch things I want to watch here anymore, and generally that's pretty decent. So
Well,
there
Mr. Butters,
are a few things out there that are worth watching, and even those things that are semi decent still got a touch of DEI bullshit in it. So it is what it is.
Well, Mr. Butters, I know that you have to get going for your work-related job. What's going on with the Salty Nerd Gaming channel before you leave?
Oh, just we're trudging away over there, and the channel's getting a little bit bigger every day, and we're having a good time doing it. We're doing 2 podcasts a week. We're doing our Hell Divers centric Salt Divers podcast on Tuesdays. It's a lot of fun. We have a good time doing that. If you guys are into that game, come join us. And then we do a more general video game podcast on Fridays. It's called Weekend Respawn. We kind of try to cater it to older gamers, people our own age, dad gamers, people who play their games on the weekends when they're not at the job. It's a fun show, and we have a good time doing it. And we have a really good Discord with a really big growing community over there. It gets bigger every day as well. And if you're looking for a squad for those games or just making some new friends, come on over and check it out. Salty Nerd Discord.
And you're also live streaming quite a bit.
Almost it's like 4 days a week. At weird random times. Yeah, we're playing different games. Yesterday I played a little Witchfire. We usually do a couple of Helldiver streams a week, and whatever else we can squeeze in there too. So yeah, it's fun stuff. Join us.
All right, Mr. Butters, thank you for being here this Saturday,
All right.
and we will catch you next time.
All right, man. See you guys all later. Hey, Philip, thank you for being here. Tom, thanks. Odin, Brian, see you guys all later. We'll see you next
Later,
time.
stud.
Okay.
Here, man.
Peace, guys.
All right.
Finally,
So-
he's gone.
Yes, he's gone. So, Tom, I wanted to throw this to you. So, the big revelation in this article is that studios are enlisting quote unquote super fans to become part of a focus group to let them know whether or not they're going to piss off other fans of whatever it is that they're making. What's your take on this? Do you think that that's actually a good idea?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, they're people who normally will pay all this money to these, groups to run all these numbers and do all this internet stuff. And, it's like, why don't you actually just ask the fans, what they really want? And I get it. Some fans are just fickle. Some are just going to tell you all kinds of crazy shit. But if you generally get about 10, 15, 20 fans of a specific IP or whatever together, and they start to talk about things, you can pretty much get everybody on board with the same kind of things if y'all have the discussion together. Like look at Star Trek as a great example, right? You get 10 Star Trek nerds in a room together, they will problem solve any storytelling element for you, right? Like that's a group that where you're going like, well, I want to do this with this character, how do I make that happen? That's the kind of group that'll say, well, you'd have to have this, this, and this to happen for that to happen, and then be like, okay, well, that's great. Now on the other side of it, if you're like testing ground for like, well, what should we do? Should we do this with a character? Should we do that with a character? That's a great way of testing things. We used to have this thing. It was called television with ratings. And we used to have shows that come out every week. And the audience used to be able to kind of tell the people what they felt about these shows by either not watching them or tuning in more often, right? So like that's kind of how it used to work. Now that we have this world that we live in now where they have exact numbers of people watching it, you'd think they'd have a better science than this. But no, at the end of the day, people just know what they like, and they don't always know how to tell you what they like, but they will tell you when they don't like something, right? So I think that's why a lot of us nerds get accused of being so toxic, because it's so much easier sometimes to be able to go, well, I know I don't like that, than it is for you to go, well, what about this? And be like, well, I don't know, maybe I might like that, but tell me how it's going to work out that way. Because you can say a certain thing and be like, yeah, I like that idea, but it depends on how you execute it, right? The Joker 2 is a great example of that. You know, on paper, it sounds like a good idea, but when it was executed now, not so much. So at the end of the day, I think it's not a horrible thing, but I don't also think that the studio should just give in to a group of fans at the same time. It's kind of it's a balancing act that they used to be able to handle really well. And I think the number one thing they need to get the hell out of the way is this idea that they need to quit blaming the audience for anything that they do wrong, right? It doesn't matter. Again, not to invoke the Joker, but it's a great example. These people going out there saying, you don't understand this movie and you're just blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you clearly did not make a movie for the audience that was there for the first movie. And when that happens, you fucking deserve what you get, in the words of Arthur Fleck. And in this case, this movie is going to bomb hard this weekend because the audience is just like, I didn't want to see this. Furiosa is another example of that recently, right? Fury Road was a bomb. People forgot that. But through video and other means, people got the idea that people would still be interested in something like this. Yeah, they'd be interested in a Mad Max movie, maybe even a Mad Max movie with Tom Hardy in it. But who the hell gives a shit about Furiosa at the end of the day? We know everything we need to know about Furiosa. There's nothing else you can tell me that's going to surprise me or make me think, God, I'm glad they made Furiosa. You know, and that's the thing is testing groups like that can be even more valuable than any metrics or any of those kind of companies can bring to the table, because you can really get a sense of how the people are going to feel. Like Joker was done without a test screening. I cannot imagine doing a movie nowadays without a test screening, especially considering how easy it is to fix something now compared to the day back in the day when everything was done on film and analog, right? Because it's so much easier now just to throw your actors in front of a green screen and shoot them. You know, you're using digital cameras, so the cost is minimal. You know, I mean, they reshot Flash 3 times. I mean, you'd think they could have showed.
That's true.
You could have come up with something here, but no. At the end of the day, I think if there was a group of fans that were involved with that movie, it probably would have turned out better.
You know, Odin, there's a concept in marketing called post-content analysis, which is basically when somebody puts out a commercial or some type of social media or something like that, there are teams whose only job is to look at how audiences are reacting to it. So they read all the comments, they look for patterns and feedback and figure out, okay, people really responded well to this, they didn't respond so well to that. And then that informs their next round of content creation in terms of advertising. It strikes me as funny that Hollywood hasn't caught on to this quite yet, where it's like, okay, read all the comments on YouTube, read all the comments on social media, look for the patterns, look at what the fans are saying they don't like, look at what the fans are saying they do like, and then adjust accordingly. Why do you think that's so hard for Hollywood to do?
I mean, it's because they live in these bubbles, and specifically they live in the ideological bubbles of what everyone in their own business and in their own spaces are. I mean, the studies have already been shown about how so many of these people who have a much more, you know, what we call a left-wing ideology typically only receive similar ideas and similar feedback in what it is that they're actually consuming. Now, for a company, you would think that they would not care about the political ideology of anyone, because as long as they're watching your movie or watching your show, that's all that should really matter. But we also know that these are crazy people who really cannot quite understand the fact that true diversity is diversity of thought and not of some arbitrary thing. And so I think that that's a big problem, is that I would not be surprised if this arbitration or this arbitrary idea of what true diversity is now influencing their very decision-making. And that is now also leading to really bad ideas in their films and in their marketing. And one of the reasons why I was hanging up, I was holding up a film like Godzilla before, right? Godzilla -1, which is a phenomenal movie, despite what Dutch Butters might claim.
Leave
about
Godzilla out of
itself. This. Exactly. But I will bring it up. It's just because of the fact that this is a film that obviously, even if you didn't like it, no one could deny this film was a huge hit. This film was a huge success, and that the reception of this movie was so much that they were that they were actually able to put out different releases for this movie that sold like hotcakes. Like this is the Japanese release, the collector's edition release from Godzilla.com that was very hard to get because everyone really wanted a copy. Everyone was asking every day, when is this coming out of physical media? When is this coming out of physical media?
Oh, I'm pretty sure this movie like made the economy in Japan
absolutely.
go up, like astronomically.
Absolutely. And so it's like the same people though that are fans of this movie are the same who would also maybe be critical of something like the Star Wars films or the MCU films that have been coming out. And so the same people that they would be calling ists and phobes really like a film predominantly by Asian people who themselves may not actually be Asian. But those racists, right? How dare we do that? They also like to throw the sexist thing around. And it's like people like me. I saw this film Cabrini, which I thought was also a phenomenal movie. The main point of it, though, is, in my opinion, that they, again, are so caught up in their own bubbles that they don't quite understand that just because you're critical does not mean that you're an ist or a phobe. You mentioned, like in the article, how there is the talk of what Moses Ingram claims she had in her inbox. Now, I do not deny, are there probably at least a few people in there that were saying some actual racist things? I do not deny it at all because this is the internet. And on the internet, guess what? You're going to get those attacks regardless of whatever race you might be, because you're also going to get death threats as well, no matter how big or small you might be on the internet. And so these are things that happen. They're not good. They should never be excused. But the fact is that this is not exclusive to just you or your race or your gender, because this is something that happens to all different types of persons. And so it's kind of ridiculous that they're going to now say, just because there might be a few people in there, because I also think, just as there were a few people in there saying actual racist things, the most of it, I would imagine, would probably just people being critical of her and her performance, critical of her and the role that she had, which does not automatically then just make it racist. But they would like to think, because now they include things like microaggressions and all this nonsense, talk these days of things that they count as being actual racism when it actually in reality is not, because they can't live in reality. They can't live in the real world because they are stuck in these ideological bubbles and spaces.
I do want to point out that one episode of The Acolyte cost more than Godzilla -1.
It did.
That's
it absolutely did.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, Mr. Philip Chan, you mentioned before, like Kelly Marie Tran and the claims that she got bullied off of social media for her role in Star Wars. And we have examples of Daisy Ridley basically dismissing criticism of Rey as misogyny. And in fact, when it comes to this Moses Ingram thing that was mentioned in this article, I believe that there were a number of stories that reported about how Lucasfilm warned her ahead of the release of Obi-Wan that Star Wars fans are racists and they will be throwing racial slurs at her and stuff like that just for being involved in Star Wars. And a big part of the campaign to deplatform Star Wars Theory and Nerdrotic and Geeks and Gamers and stuff like that was that they were spreading hate by criticizing a diverse Star Wars show like The Acolyte that starred people of color. It had nothing to do with how badly written it was. It was all because it was a diverse cast. What's your take on this idea that basically Hollywood is kind of preemptively calling racism on criticism that is actually legitimate about the quality of their product?
Because they know their shit's gonna suck. So it's just like, hey, just letting you know, your shit's gonna suck. So just you're gonna get a bunch of people online who are gonna say mean things about you. They're gonna call you racist, bigot, or whatever. So it's like, I think like these people don't have like any thought or any knowledge of what constructive criticism actually really is, right? You have this fandom that's been in this fandom for like more than 40 years now, and then people are like, oh, we know what this is. We know that it doesn't matter what IP you're talking about. Like the fans know everything, and that's why they hate people like Henry Cavill or even Jenna Ortega, who has to speak out like, no, this character isn't supposed to be like that, and they consider them, some kind of like an annoyance in their production. A really good thing is when people don't buy your stuff and then they blame the fans. It's because that's when we know, like, well, you guys make crappy things. More like for a video game example, most recently Ubisoft showed that they lost anywhere from $650 to $850 million on one single project that's called Skull and Bones, which is according to them a quadruple A game. And they said that that's the reason why we're sucking, and is because they get stuff like toxic positivity in their studios. and you can only say nice things. You cannot say anything constructive about it. And that's where a lot of these people, and I blame my my generation, the millennials, for it. It's because we don't like hearing terrible things, and it's like, oh, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. That kind of mentality, and that's what ruins a lot of things. Not just video games, movies, TV shows goes along with it as well. And when you have people who are like, oh, the reason why your movie sucks isn't because I'm a bad actor or I'm getting really bad writing or bad direction from my directors. It's just people are just racist towards me. So it's just it just there's nothing that we're doing that's incorrect according to what people think. But these actors and these adult pretenders, they're just like, it's not my fault. It's everyone else's fault. And it's exactly like the thing you pulled up. Am I out of touch? No, it's not. And it's just don't ask questions, just consume product and just get excited for next product. That's what they want us to do.
That famous red letter media meme. Indeed. Nothing bites harder than accurate representation on that stuff. I want to throw this to Brian, though. Brian, one of the big clapbacks I see on social media about like quote unquote toxic fans are like people who are like, why can't you just let people enjoy stuff? And that seems to be like the common kind of clapback against criticism of these shows is like, oh, you're so toxic, you can't let people like what they like. But they're conflating toxicity with legitimate criticism for what people don't like. And I think what people don't like is just as valid as what people like. So what's your take on how Hollywood just can't take criticism and they try to frame it as toxicity?
Yeah. I saw recently someone post, and I retweeted it. I'll just say this. Just a reminder that fans don't have a say in what creators create or something like that. Right? I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And here's the problem with, I think that a lot of these creators are so hyper entitled because they've been taught that way. They've been bred that way, that you're special. You create something that people, digest or consume. And here's the problem. Fans are the final say. We decide with our patronage, with our money, with our time, if we are going to consume your slop. And here's the deal. A lot of fans are waking up to the fact that we don't have to consume slop. There's a lot more options. When there were 3 channels on TV and they were all on for 6 hours a day, you had 3 options, 6 hours a day. Now there are thousands of television channels. There are millions of online resources. There are millions and millions of videos, streaming services, movies, YouTube, Tubi, whatever. You have to compete for our love. You are not competing in this little echo chamber with a couple movie studios and a couple channels. This is not the 70s or 80s. There is a lot of options now. And some of those options are options like us. YouTube channels online that can make content that people want to consume or people want to listen to. Discussions, videos, docuseries, documentaries like mine, and a plethora of amazing content that in a lot of ways are better than the movies that they're based on. So if I have options now, if I have all these options and all these streams of information and entertainment, why do you possibly think that I have to consume your product? I don't. I can just say, I'm good. Which means that your studio won't make money and eventually you'll stop getting work. That's how it works. We are the final say. And if we're the final say, then maybe you should listen to us. Maybe toxic fans aren't the problem. Maybe toxic creators are the problem.
Yeah, there's an old saying that says the customer's always right. Correct.
Hello?
If people want to stay in business, they got to cater to their customers.
Yep.
Fans are the customers. Fans do get a say in how these famous franchises are run.
The final
And-
say.
and the people who ignore them do so to their detriment. Real quick, want to give a big shout out to Darth Maul's lower half for €5. Superfans equal shills. They would never invite the likes of you, me, Gary, or the Drinker, or Star Wars Theory. That's true. I don't think that these focus groups are really super fans. They are super shills. that are posing as fans, and they'll just give love to whatever the studio thinks is best. Also, big shout out to Wolverine Snicked, who just became a member of the channel. Thank you, Wolverine Snicked. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I get the sound effect thing, but be sure to check out the members only playlist now that you've become a member, and we're going to be adding to that hopefully on a weekly basis real soon. So guys, there's one more story I want to get to before we wrap things up, and that is having to do with the Rings of Power and the fact that they're potentially getting a season 3. Now, we all know that season 2 just wrapped up. Odin, I think, is the only person on the panel that was forced to watch the entire season. Odin, real quick, can you just give us a breakdown of how season 2 was? Was it good, bad, terrible, forgettable?
Somehow it was worse than the first season, which is saying quite a bit. And also, I don't mind spoiling this at all, but you know how everyone was like, huh, I bet that stranger's Gandalf. We call that thing early. And,
you mean Grand Elf? I couldn't see that coming.
No, because he was a grand elf.
Yeah.
A grand elf.
That is so clever.
Oh, so clever.
Oh my God, that's so clever.
Oh, everything about this.
I'm blown away with how clever that is.
We called that the minute he showed up in season 1.
We're like, Gandalf, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to not play that. Okay, gotcha. Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding me? Bad. Gandalf costs too much money. We're going to call him Grand Elf.
So bad.
Did he get his staff at least?
He did. He got a staff. And now Tom Bombadil's going to teach him magic, because that's just how it works. I guess.
So overall, what would you give season 2 of Rings of Power in terms of a rating?
If I gave season 1 a D, this one would be an F.
Okay. Well, guess what?
Like, there's like no redeeming qualities to this show.
Yeah, guess what? Despite the ratings or the quality, Amazon is basically considering a season 3 renewal, and apparently they're on the verge of it, right? And you know, I've heard lots of stories about the ratings for season 2, and none of them seem very good. But studio head Jennifer Salke told buyers that season 2 has generated over 55 million viewers, and the company expects the latest season to eventually catch up to the first season, which reached more than 150 million views. Although Amazon declines to define what constitutes a viewer, but has said the show remains the top 5 series on the streamer.
We believe you.
Yes. Rings of Power also topped the Nielsen's chart during its most recently reported second week, with over 1 billion minutes streamed. On the reception front, Rotten Tomatoes critic and audience's scores were a bit stronger for the second round than the first. That's because all the people who hated it stopped watching. But what I found very interesting was actually reported today over on Twix, which is that basically they fired pretty much all but one of their writing staff in preparation for going into season 3. Yeah, nothing says confidence like firing all your writers, right?
Yeah.
So I want to open this up to the panel. Do you guys think it's a good move for Amazon to keep renewing the season? Because it seems like their goal here is to basically go 5 seasons or bust, no matter what the quality of the show is. But in my take, the firing of the writing staff is a sure sign that basically Amazon said, hey, if you want your season 3, you need to have better writers on the show. And so I think that they're going to keep throwing good money after bad when it comes to this show, because they kind of committed to like 5 seasons from the get-go. But I think that this is a sure sign that basically Amazon and the showrunners know that season 2 was kind of a fuck up. So I'm just going to open it up to the panel. What do you guys think of that?
As I've been mentioning this for a while, that this is such a vanity project by Amazon. And so it's one of those things where, you know how we knew, oh, Star Trek Discovery is going to have a certain number of seasons because it was already paid for. That's essentially what's going on here. It's like, okay, it was already guaranteed. What was it, like $1 billion they gave for this thing to be shot over so many seasons? So I feel like at this point, they don't care that no one's liking the show. They don't care that the few people that are still left watching the show, and I think many of them would actually be people who are being critical of the show, are, you know, not watching it anymore, really. And one of my best examples of this fact is if you look at the 163 critic reviews for season 1, episode 1 on Rotten Tomatoes, guess what the last episode has? 13. So 163 people who started watching the show in the very beginning because they got access, because they got instant reaction stuff, they couldn't even stay with the first season. Now we have an opening episode of this season getting in like the 16 plus range, and now it's only 13. So that's the kind of things that the critics are doing. So you can only imagine what the audience drop off is. It's bad.
The first season was famously 70% drop off from the first episode to the finale, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Brian, I think it's funny that basically this article mentions that Amazon has yet to define what constitutes a viewer, but they got 50 million of them.
Yeah, the whole we don't have to share our numbers, but here's our magic numbers thing is just so silly to me. The whole writers' strike and actors' strike was pretty much about them not wanting to share with the agents, with the actors, with the people, the writers, the people that they were in negotiation with, their actual numbers. They almost tanked their entire. That's how important it is to them. They would rather tank their entire industry for an entire year because it did ruin. It wrecked projects for a year, just to make sure that the people they're negotiating with and the public can never see the actual numbers. They need to control what you are thinking of their service, which is so nuts. Like, imagine if I said, "Hey, Matt, listen, we're gonna need the viewers here to pay us based on nothing, and just trust that what we're telling you you're getting is what you're getting." Like, I don't understand how it's even legal. But I get the whole private industry thing, whatever. How can you negotiate on a contract when you don't even know what the previous movie or TV show you did for that company did? How much it was worth? How many people watched it? How many subscribers it brought in? Whatever. The fact that they don't have to share that information is crazy. I'm going to say it one more time. We need a service out there, like a digital Nielsen service, that just tracks information based on like maybe you have a Nielsen plugin on your browser or your Roku or whatever, and when you're watching something, it feeds numbers to a Nielsen database, and so we can get actual numbers on what shows are doing well or what movies are actually number one. Because who knows what the Netflix algorithm actually means when it was like, this is top number one in the United States today. You're like, really? That's okay. The British Bake Off is number one TV show today. Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure how that tracks, but okay, whatever.
I mean, I'd believe that. That's an excellent show.
I've never seen it. I don't care. But
It's
some of
delightful.
this stuff makes no sense.
It's wonderful.
Like, dude, I got suggested Elektra, the movie Elektra with Jennifer, whatever her name is, from like 20 years
Jennifer
ago.
Garner. Yeah.
Jennifer Garner. Yeah, you go to Max right now. It's like critically acclaimed action movie Elektra. I'm like, what? Who put this on this list as number one and said this is a good pick for the critically acclaimed action movie? Like, this is insane. Like, they're just making
No one
crap
said
up
they
now.
didn't lie.
I want to throw this to Mr. Philip Chan real quick, because I think that one of the interesting things about Rings of Power is that they've pissed off all the hardcore Tolkien fans with their lack of adhesion to canon. And then they've pissed off the casual audience because, like, number one, it's poorly written slop. But number two, like, they get super political with these things, and they accuse fans of being racist for pointing out that they're breaking canon and they're miscasting stuff and things of that nature. So what's your take on this? Do you think that that they know who they're making this series for, or are they just saying like, oh, like, this is for us, this isn't for the fans?
I think it's the latter. They know exactly what they're doing, and they know that they're going to rile up a lot of the Tolkien fans, right? Like with the whole thing with it's a guy from he was in World War II, and he is a guy from Europe. He made this thing for he's white. Of course he's gonna make a book or a series, or like, it's all gonna of course gonna be about white people. Like, who it's, and then you have this article saying that, oh, it's it's not diverse enough, and it's aged poorly, and they know this is a divisive IP that they can use to push their agenda. And if you don't like it, then it's your fault, right? And now here's the thing. I think they should continue. I don't think they should cancel it, is because we get more content out of it. And I'm pretty sure like everyone, like I'm pretty sure like Gary and like people who's been watching this, they probably way more money than like it actually made. Is because overall like $1 billion for this entire thing is pretty damn awful. And it just, I haven't seen the last episode yet. Like I still need to watch it, but according to what I heard, like they're Celebrimbor and Sauron supposed to be gay for each other. Like, I'm like, what?
Of course.
What? So basically they're actually smashing their metal junk against one another, right? So I
It's
don't
not
know.
explicit. Yeah, it's not explicit. But there's looks they give where it's like,
Yeah, right. It's like, and then you have people who are super excited. It's like, oh, like tell me that you're not like excited about this last fight, and it's like terribly choreographed, like sword swing against Sauron's face. Like, I'm like, dude, I like it's this show. It's made for the shippers. It's made for people who love Twilight. It's made for people who love 50 Shades of Grey. And it's like, oh, we got to get them. They have to be banging for sure, right? You can't have a brotherly love kind of thing. Brothers and art, they have to be having sex. I'm just like, dude, just make something good. It's like, what are you doing?
Well,
I don't
also
know what the. Go ahead.
Elrond kisses Galadriel.
yeah. Well, also there's the whole Galadriel Sauron ship as well.
Yeah.
I don't understand why the same generation that goes, everything's sexualized. We don't need to see sex and nudity in movies and TV. Are the same generation that has to ship everything. Like you two bros can't just go up to a mountain and toss a ring in. They have to be gay lovers. They have to be. Everything has to be shipped. Everyone has to be having sex off camera for it to be a real. No one can be friends anymore. The same exact generation that complains about boobies in Game of Thrones. Can I just add one more quick thing?
One can complain about it and also still not be a shipper, by the way. Just saying.
That's true, but you're the exception. Most of this generation is complaining about everything, talking about sex, but then they want to ship everything. Now, one more thing that I found a little shocking. Actually, no, continue. I'm just going to ramble. Go ahead, man.
All right. I want to give Tom the last word on this. Tom, Amazon and Jennifer Salke famously are starfuckers. They love spending money for clout and all that stuff. And this seems to be more of a statement than anything at this point, where they're like, we're going to spend $1 billion on a TV show. What's your take on that?
I mean, look, I could think of a few different ways to put money into a furnace and set it on fire, I guess. Making this show would not be one of them. But yeah, like there's an agenda behind this. This show is made, just like a lot of the things we're talking about today. This show is made more in spite of the fans than to actually be something for the fans. I've not watched more than like 10, 15 minutes of the first episode. I shit you not. Like once I got to the scene where, what's his name? Oh God, I just forgot it. The guy's writing poetry in the tree. All that gay poetry thing. I checked out.
Celebrimbor, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it was in that first episode. I'm just like, nah, I'm good. And look, I hope, because we all heard early on that Amazon had bought into this thing lock, stock, and barrel, and they were like committed to making 50 hours of content or something like that they paid for. But now George the Giant Slayer has said that he heard that they can get out of this contract, and it's not exactly what we had heard. If that's the case, that's too bad, because I almost want to see them have to go through this, right? Like a lesson. Because I mean, their solution to fixing the first season was to double down on the stupid and have nothing but female directors. Like that was the answer. And I mean, anybody who's dumb enough to think that's what's going to fix your show, again, to use the phrase, that you get what you fucking deserve. Yep. I mean, you could pretend this thing's a hit, but we all know it's not. And half the people that are watching it or hate watching it or laughing at it.
Yeah, everyone knows it's not a hit. Even the people who actually like it, which are rare, they know that no one else likes it. The creators that have the real numbers, they know that no one likes this. because you don't even have to look at the numbers behind the scenes. You can just look at the social media forecast, the people online talking about it. Everyone that is not talking about it, that says more than the people that are. And the people that are talking about it are saying only negative things. They know for a fact that this is a massive total failure, and they're going to continue to spin and just spit out lies. So that I don't know. I'm not even sure why. Someone in chat said, "Why are they burning money? Is it for clout?" I don't have another reason. Ego,
it's
I guess.
Pure ego. It's like, this is my vanity project, and no one's going to tell me that it's failing because everything's fine, and I can still make it because I got all the money in the world. That's essentially what it is.
Well, also, according to Amazon's own numbers, right? So the first season got 150 million viewers. This season got 55 million, and they're like, oh, over time, it'll eventually reach those season 1 numbers. But it's like, nah, dude. Like, you'll be lucky if you hit 60 million
That's not how the force works.
Over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You usually don't. Once you've hit a peak and you go down, there's no going back up. The only time that happens for a TV show is a season or series finale, usually, right? And that's usually of a beloved show. Usually, by the time if a show has fallen off to the point where the audience don't give a shit anymore, they get canceled before they even get a series finale or anybody realizes that was the series finale, right? Even the people making it. So, like, yeah, at the end of the day, you guys are 100% right. I feel like this is just an exercise in stupidity, just like Batwoman. It's all ego. You got to keep it going, because if you cancel it, then it's admitting defeat.
Yeah, real quick, we got a super chat from Kaliki Oki. I hope I pronounced that right. For $2. What is the benefit of burning all this money? Is it clout? And I think we already answered that. But thank you for that super chat, Kaliki. All right, guys, we had a lot to talk about today, and we talked about it. I want to thank my fantastic panel of nerds for being here, starting with Lord of the Pizza, Pineapple on Pizza, Odin of O&B Reviews.
Got tripped up there a little bit, huh? You were saying Lord of the Shells?
Lord of the Shells and the pineapple pizza.
The Lord of the creamy peanut butter. There we go.
Creamy peanut butter.
The creamy peanut butter
The
is so
butter,
beautiful.
Oh, creamy peanut butter.
It is creamy.
The high priest
Peanut butter
peanut butter,
and pineapple on pizza.
All right, we
There you
can't
go.
be singing anymore, okay? There's at least one person in the chat that hates musicals, and so he's going to turn it off if we keep singing.
I hate musicals.
So, Odin, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Yeah, you can find me over at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, all of the different platforms. And as far as my final thoughts are concerned, oh man, yeah, I can't believe that Agatha is still going on. If we're speaking of bad shows, gosh,
Agatha's better than Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry, Rings of Power.
because it's shorter. Ultimately, I mean,
No, it literally is better though. Even if it wasn't shorter, like Rings of Power is unwatchable. It's
Both are
so
unwatchable.
cringe and just horrible. Agatha is semi-watchable.
Since we're talking about Agatha, and also basically, from what I understand here, Agatha's the cheapest Marvel series that they have made thus far.
Oh, and it shows. It's just a bunch of older women in a room somewhere, basically. It's very little to do.
Yes, but Odin, where can people find more of you?
I already mentioned.
Okay.
Yes, but thank y'all. I have to go. My son's really yelling, "Daddy!"
Later, Odin.
Daddy!
Yep.
Love you, buddy.
Later, Odin.
Bye.
Take
See
it
you
easy,
next-
Odin.
See you next Saturday. Tom Connors Jr., any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Well, let's see here. Some final thoughts.
Tom is like, am I still on the show? I
don't even know anymore what I'm doing. Hello, goodbye. We got Project Eggroll here, so that's cool. But thank you for being here tonight. I'll be hosting Flashcast over on Mead, so you can find me over there about 9:30 Central. Hopefully people show up. Other than that, you can find me at Midnight's Edge After Dark, Mead Radio. We're dropping a new channel called Retrospectives and Classics. So check it out. And yeah, thanks for having me as always.
Good stuff. And Mr. Philip Chan from Project Eggroll, link in the description and in the chat, by the way. Any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Yeah, for me, I love indulging in these terrible shows and movies is because of content and the fact that it's like it's a sort of like a Yelp review, or whenever you hear like there's a a restaurant that came out, like you hear more of the negative, negativity versus the positive stuff. And I just love watching this crap show that it is Hollywood fail. Like of course once in a while we'll get something really, really good, but I am looking forward to finishing the Rings of Power after this. But yes, you can find me at Mr. Philip Chan #2. That's my own personal, if you guys want to follow me there on YouTube. But yes, we will be going live later tonight at Project Eggroll. You can find me there, me and Gray. We're going to be going live later on tonight. And we're also on X as well. But yes, thank you so much for having me on. It's awesome getting to talk to everyone. And yeah, we would love to come back.
Yep. Stop Asian hate. Go follow
Stop
Phil.
Asian hate.
Stop Asian hate.
Yes.
Speaking of hate, Brian from the Popcast, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
All I have to say about Asian hate, are you Asia in or Asia out for stopping it? That's right.
Oh goodness. Oh goodness. You and your dad jokes.
I'm awesome.
You can find me at the Popcast Prime channel, which is at the Popcast, POPCAST, and our live channel, which is called Pop Culture Unleashed, which is at the Popcast Live every Thursday at around 4 o'clock or so when we feel like it. Also, we got a new project coming out in the next couple weeks. Another big documentary that we've been working on for the last few months. Every one of our docu, retrospect videos take like months to make, and this one is in the process. I'm going to start editing here pretty soon. It's going to be a big deal. So go check it out, subscribe, all that stuff. And one last thing, just for you, Matt.
Okay.
Only the Zoomers know what that means.
Yes. You know what else Zoomers know what it means? And this is for Mr. Butter since he's not here. Stop the fat fuck hate.
For real.
Hashtag.
For real. Hashtag Porkins.
Yes, make that trend. Make that trend.
Make it trend.
Yes, and want to give a big shout out to all of our super chatters today. Way Too Dumb Mudafalka Gentleman, Fluffy Panda, Old Man Rising, Darth Maul's Lower Half, and Kaliki Oki. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Be sure to tune in next Saturday, same salty time, same salty channel for more Salty Saturdays. We're going to have George the Giant Slayer coming on the show to talk about what George the Giant Slayer likes to talk about. George. And and be sure to subscribe to the Salty Nerd podcast channel if you haven't already. We're putting out clips thanks to Brian. Brian's helping out with clipping the shows. Yeah. And so you get those highlights and those good things. And then we also got some new reviews slated to come out pretty soon. But until next time, everyone, stay salty, my friends.